Missing a couple of members, but we still have quorum, but we'll go through, obviously, our proper procedure here. Caitlin, if you could call the roll.
Marcus Petra.
Here.
Mike Hamner.
Here.
William Tenza.
Here.
Jennifer Brown.
Here.
Julie Theobald.
Here.
Caitlin Stark. Emily Kearney. Matthew Schichtel.
Here.
Brian Warner.
Here. Thank you, Caitlin. We do have quorum. Wanted to just provide a couple of very brief opening, welcoming remarks here, if I may, before we dive into the deep agenda that we've got. One, obviously, thank you all again for coming out this morning. I appreciate it. We, as I should say this, and it's not tongue-in-cheek at all, but, as everybody knows, we've been very engaged regarding the significant topic of PFAS, within the city and the greater Cadillac area, in and outside of the city. And obviously, it's been a topic of discussion, within our boards, both this board, the Local Development Finance Authority, and the City Council. There's been a lot of activity, a lot of effort towards this issue that's been going on now for quite some time. A lot of which is just simply not in the public view. And I just wanted to take a quick minute to try to touch upon that because I feel like we've really taken a lot of positive strides. And again, it's just not out there. It's just not in the public view. And frankly, this body, the LDFA, really has been that tip of the spear in regard to exploring and testing and analyzing data specific to PFAS, and certainly probably need to emphasize this, especially specific to the LDFA area, and that's really the important distinction. Is LDFA looks at getting into their agenda today and talking about certain things, it's important that we remember the framework of what this body is for. And this body was originally designed and developed to look at, TCE and VOCs and other pollutants and contaminants as a part of that overall Superfund site, not PFAS. But that being said, this body has taken some very positive steps in making sure that we fully understand what the PFAS situation is within that LDFA area. That being said, what I really want to be able to get out and explain very publicly and to this board first is that the city, as I say that sort of generically, is looking at a solution in terms of getting a long-term solution to those, especially within the city area where they do not have access to water main infrastructure, getting them water main infrastructure to that area. Now, one area that is the area where we know that there is PFAS detection is off of Marathon Drive. Now, this, again, is not within the purview of this body. So I got to make that very clear. It's something that the City Council will have to approve. But we're already underway in getting plans engineered and designed. I would fully anticipate getting approval to move forward with bidding the project next week. And that'll bring, water infrastructure to that Marathon Drive area. Similarly, we've also reached out to our neighbors to the north, Herring Township, willing to look at extending water infrastructure that we have that already exists in the proximity of one of their residential neighborhoods. I want to say it's Mary Street, Jeff, is that right?
Yeah.
And it would have to be at the township's cost and how they decide how to pay for it or what have you. That would be up to them. But we have some solutions. We have some options. These are things that can, relatively speaking, be done somewhat quickly for those that are in those areas that have had detections within their systems. The instant solution for them is to go through the state process and get a filter. But we are working behind the scenes and bringing those solutions forward. Additionally, I believe this week we're going to actually start delivering water to those folks in the city so that they don't have to go out to the water operations center off of 44 Road. So again, there's a lot of good positive things that are happening. I appreciate everyone's patience in allowing me just to have these few remarks. I recognize that this all is not within the purview of the LDFA, but I think that because there is some confusion that's out there about what the responsibility is of this body as it pertains to this issue, I would try to take a moment to clarify. Hopefully I clarified and I didn't confuse things, but at any rate, unless there's any questions for me, I think we could probably move forward with the agenda. Did Owen Roberts step in here, by the way?
He was, and then
Oh. Any luck, my friend? Should we keep going? Well, why don't we move forward with approval of the minutes? Our finance director's got a hard stop. He had asked if he could be moved up a little bit on the agenda. And so my thought is that as we move through items 2 and 3, just before we get to public comments, we allow our finance director to provide the financial update that is going to be under item, I think, 10 on the agenda. So without any further ado, item 2, looking for approval of the minutes, please, for the December 2nd, 2024 meeting.
I'll make that motion.
A support.
Brian,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Jennifer, Julie,
Yes.
Caitlin, Emily, and Matthew.
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes. Item 3, looking for approval of the closed session meeting minutes of the December 2nd, 2024 meeting, please.
So moved.
Support.
Marcus,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Caitlin, Emily, Matthew,
Yes.
and Brian.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Motion passes. Again, just asking if the rest of the board is okay. If not, please advise. I'd like to move up our finance report that is item 10 under the agenda just before our public comments. That way we can use our finance director while he's here, and then he is free to depart. May I be so forward as to actually ask for a motion to move that?
I'll make that motion.
Support.
Thank you.
Mike,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Caitlin, Emily, Matthew,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Marcus.
Yes. Okay. Owen, you're on.
All right, thank you. I apologize for the little bit of chaos here. Literally unplugged my computer to bring it in here, and now it's frozen, and locked, and I can't see anything that I had, but most of it I can recreate on another one. So I think the main things that I'm here for, I'm going to give a little bit of history on the prior fiscal year. And then I'm going to let you know how the budget looks for this year, and then tell you how we're doing year to date. One of the questions that I've been tasked with answering was there's this 50% thing where the special assessment was to cover 50% of the treatment costs. So we've gone back to day one, and there are some questions on the applicability of that. However, we did look up and kind of accumulate costs, special assessment, revenue, and I had it all right there on Excel on my laptop. And the being locked is look like a real professional today. I apologize for that. But so essentially, I'll get you really, really close. The treatment costs from day one were about $6.7 million. And I'll have Marcus provide the exact numbers. The special assessment revenues were about 43% of that. So whatever that math works out to be. And then we had earned about $1 million in interest income. So the current position is we would comply with that 50% requirement should it still be something that the city needs to comply with. So that was kind of question one on the status of those assessments over the course of time. There was 3 assessments that were passed. They were 5-year assessments. They ranged from 190 to 220 per year during the times of those assessments. So that's the status of those. As far as the current finances go, I want to assure you that the financial records of the LDFA authority have been audited each and every year. I know that question had come up as well. They are what's called a component unit of the city, which is just an accounting term defined by the Government Accounting Standards Board, making that a requirement that we show them in our financial statements and include them in the audit. So we do that. We've done that every single year. So I wanted to make that assurance. As of June 30 of 2024, that there's basically 2 funds that this group sort of has purview over. One of those being the operating funds, and that's where we handled the operating costs to run the groundwater cleanup facility. The other one is a fund that takes the deposits of the tax captures. And so those are deposited into a separate account, separate fund, accounted for completely separately, and then used in accordance with the TIF plan. So the operating fund at the end of our last fiscal year, which is June 30 of 2024, had a fund balance of about $5,800. And that's about what you would expect since it's having to be subsidized at this point, so there's not funds left over in that operating fund. Where the tax captures are deposited, the fund balance was $1,187,723. So there still is a healthy fund balance of those funds that are left over in that fund. For the
Read us
year,
that number again, please.
I'm
1
sorry,
million?
$1,187,723.
Thank you.
For the year ended 6/30/24, from a revenue and cost perspective, the operations spent about $243,000. That's primarily utility costs, electric and gas, to run the pumps in the wells, and then the operating the cleanup facility. In the LDFA tax capture fund, the current capture was $146,487. There was $39,645 in interest earnings on excess funds. And there were some contractual services paid to the tune of $9,329. And then $210,000 was transferred over to cover the operations to run the treatment process. So that kind of tells us where we are at as of June 30 of 24. Again, I will be right to the budget, which was all accumulated into one spot on my computer, but so again, also we do, the city council has adopted a budget every single year, and that includes these funds, and the same 2 funds basically that we just reported on as far as the results perspective. We also budget for those funds as well. So for the current fiscal year, which is about 50% done, we had budgeted a transfer of $284,000 to cover operations, and those operating costs include about $35,000 for staff, and that is primarily the utilities employee responsible for maintaining the facility and being out there and running tests and compiling the reports that are required, etc. About $30,000 in contracted lab costs were budgeted, $180,000 for utilities, and 14,000 for repairs and maintenance. Total cost $284,800. We are, again, about 50% of the way done with the year, and the fund has spent $127,046 so far in the current fiscal year to date. That's about $18,000 in salaries and wages, about $17,000 in contracted lab costs. That's where they pay for all the tests. And then almost $83,000 so far this fiscal year in utilities, which at this point last year was just over $100,000. So it's gone down a little bit. There could be some timing issue of when we've received and paid for those bills as well. So that's where we are in the current fiscal year to date. We are anticipating a little bit more capture this year to the tune of about $163,000, and that's on those parcels primarily in the Potvin Industrial Park, which is more of the newer park. A lot of it's undeveloped, and where there's Piranha Hose, Spencer Plastics, I think they're new names at this point. DT has some parcels in there that some taxes are captured from. So that should bring in about $163,000. We have earned about $16,000 in interest income on investing the excess proceeds and spent about $6,000 in contractual services. That gets us to where we are year to date. So we talked about last year, we talked about the budget, we talked about this year to date. Those were kind of the questions that I was supposed to answer today. Do you have any other questions that you wanted to ask at this time?
Oh, and we're out of order, so maybe this is more a Marcus or Jeff question. On the Article 3, which we're going to talk about, it says the director shall render to the board and to the city council a regular report. Is that the financial director or is that the utility director? It just says generically the director.
That's in the bylaws. I
Well,
believe
we're gonna address, we're out of
the
order.
director of the LDFA, which I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep, so we'll
But-
talk about
Okay,
that. in a minute.
the chair or, I don't want to
So,
confuse.
regardless of who that is, let's just assume that the director will be the utilities director. We would still have our finance director come and provide this report on an annual basis.
Two other questions, Owen. Did I get it right that 43% of the revenue is from assessment? Past
The
assessment?
assessment has covered, just directly the assessment, 43% of operating costs of the plant. Operating costs of the plant,
And
yes.
the last question, when was the assessment stopped?
2012 was the last assessment.
12 years.
Yep,
Okay, thank you.
yep.
I just want to add that, Owen, correct me if I'm wrong, all this information is online. The annual budget's online that includes all of this, as well as an archive of the audit from the most recent that's going to be presented publicly. Is it next week or is it in February? Do you know?
It's in February.
All right, so but it is already posted. We just got it and posted it yesterday.
It is, yep. These documents have been linked on the LDFA webpage as part of the reporting requirements on the website that we're required to have out there. So there's been a link to our budget, a link to our annual comprehensive financial report since we put that information online. These funds are fairly deep within those documents, but they also have always had bookmarks that should open up when you open up the document to make it a little bit easier to find. The table of contents are typically hyperlinked as well, so if you can find the information in the table of contents, you should be able to click on it and be taken right to all this information. So, and again, that's been on that page for the last 5 or 6 years that we've been required to put that information out there.
Apologies, one last question, Owen. On the independent audit of the LDFA, is that part of an overarching city audit?
It is, yep.
Okay.
Yep,
That's,
yep.
thank you.
So, Owen, I want to make sure I understand, not precisely, but generally,
Sure.
the moving parts. It looks like our TIF revenues are funding the operation to the tune of 140, 160,000 a year. Our spend, our operating spend is about 250 to 280, and could go up, Marcus. I mean, as we get this RFP in for the consultant, not sure where those dollars are gonna be. That could put some, well, it will put some pressure on our annual budget. I won't dive into that now, but it sounds like the capital fund, what I would call the capital fund, is the fund that's got $1.1 million in it now. We're going down about $100K a year on that fund, and that fund, one of the purposes of that fund isn't it to set aside dollars for decommissioning?
It would be, yeah. Yep,
So
yep.
we can't live like that
That's correct.
much
Yep.
much longer, but we'll have to look at assessments in the future, not today, or soon, but we need to understand our costs and decommission and future costs before we can make that call. There is another LDFA line item. I don't know if it's under our purview. I don't think it is. It's the Cadillac
for the well.
Renewables. The well, and that's
Yep.
got a fund balance of about 400,000.
It does, yep. So the fund the fund that Brian is referring to is the one that, as part of the development of the groundwater treatment process, there was another well installed right by the cogen power plant, and that well was owned, operated, and maintained by the city. And there was an agreement, and part of the development agreement, where that would revert to the power company at a certain date in the future. And that date has passed, and the closing for that has just happened within the last couple of months. So that now is property owned by the power plant. There's still some transition work to be done, mostly, I think, training, not really any spending on our part necessarily. But that still is there. That was part of the overall development of the groundwater treatment process. And yeah, there is about $428,000 in fund balance
Do they own
remaining
that?
from
Do they
that
own
whole
those funds
process.
too? Do we transfer those funds to the Cadillac?
Yeah, I think that's a question that we'll try and answer, is who makes the decision on where those residual funds left over there go, right? So don't know specifically the answer to that question yet.
So it's not clear if those funds are restricted or if the city.
Yeah, are they general city funds or are they LDFA specific funds? But
I will declare my intention on those funds.
You would like those to be LDFA
I will
funds,
declare
yeah.
openly that I would
Yep.
like to see those funds be transferred to the LDFA if it's appropriate.
Okay.
But I don't know, there's so much I don't know, but I will declare my intentions
Yep,
today that, hey,
Yeah, I
if
think- yep.
there's an appropriate way where we can, it wouldn't go into the operating budget, but if it could go into that capital budget designed for the closure of the wells eventually, we'll get there.
Yep.
That
I
would
don't think the
take-
development agreement considered, a big fund balance at the end. It's really worked out. It's worked out well. That well didn't need, major repairs or reconstruction of any kind. So, those could be fairly unrestricted funds where there could be some creative decisions made. Again, we need to make sure that we have a clear understanding of what body makes those decisions.
It would take the pressure off, the pressure
Sure,
off
yep. Yep.
the transfer of funds from that budget.
Yep.
But, Mr. Manager, I am no way claiming any authority whatsoever. This is a city council decision. This is not my decision, but I'm just saying it would be nice. if-
Yeah,
could help
and
reduce-
certainly now's the time to make that decision. We didn't want to make that decision before the actual closing happened, because if something would have,
Sure.
if something happened or there was a major repair that needed to take place on that well, right up until closing date, those funds would have been needed for that.
And I
So,
respect the
yep,
fact that
now's
there
the
may
time.
be many other priorities other than my wish that the city needs to consider. So I respectfully
Well, it could also help soften the landing on the future special assessment as well, if it's legally able to be used for that.
So, one more task for you, Mr. Owen,
Thank you.
Can I have another?
and Mr. Manager.
No, that's an important question, and certainly those funds, I think, could provide a good seed for some important things, and
if
we'll
it-
certainly recommend
And I
accordingly.
certainly respect the other wishes of my other LDFA board members on that question.
A quick comment. Owen,
Yeah,
thank
go
you
ahead,
for this
Matt.
information on a yearly basis. Is there a way that, and I know stuff is online as far as overall budgets, but a monthly spreadsheet or maybe
Yeah,
bi-monthly
yep,
so that
yep.
we can be a little more informed as.
Yep, we'll
these
get into the
numbers-
rhythm of that as we proceed and kind of determine that monthly meeting. The information that I was looking for here, we'll just provide as part of the packet.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Okay.
When's the audit ready, usually?
The audit usually is ready by the end of December.
In December?
Yep. So it is the new one, was the one that I was quoting from for our 6/30/24 fiscal year.
Well,
And again, I'll provide specific numbers. I apologize for the last minute tech issue.
you can kick them to me and I'll be happy to forward them.
Yeah, yep, so that you'll know exact numbers on, especially on those percentages and things, because I know that's an important question, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for flexing the schedule a little bit for me.
At this point, everyone, we're at public comments. We'd like to just remind the group that it's not an open dialogue, it's an opportunity to address the LDFA. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And with that, when you arrive at the podium, please let us know who you are.
Bill Barnett, thank you for continuing in the direction this board has been going. Doing a great job moving forward. Please continue those steps. I would ask you to consider testing the remaining 12 LDFA wells. Almost 4 years ago, over 4 years ago, the EPA wanted them all tested. It's time to finish that up. We're coming on 5 years. There's 18 wells that haven't been tested, 6 have, 12 haven't. It's taking a little bit too long to get a new consultant, new lawyer. You've been talking about this since June. We're now close getting into February. It's gone on too long. We have an emergency in the community. Your properties play some role in that. I don't know what it is because there's not been enough testing. Certainly the DFA has something to do with this. There were chemicals going across Leeson in 2007 toward Mary Street, Marathon area. It was migrating. That needs to be looked at. It was crossing into North Park as well. So please test your own wells. There's been no quarterly testing. I'm concerned about the lack of testing. There's 26 drinking wells in the community so far that have come back above criteria, federal criteria. 11 in Herring. These are all by the ISD. 13 residents in the city that are outside of your LDFA zone. There's 100 more that need to be tested, and somebody's got to test these. There's 2 city residents in the zone of your properties. 2 have been tested. Number 3 is coming very soon. So 26 homes so far over criteria. 61 homes tested in Cadillac and Herring. John R. Meyer Street, ISD are in those figures. Those are from quite some time ago. 75 to 88% of your tests are coming back with some PFAS in it. And that includes Mary Street, which is in Herring, and the ISD. 43% of wells tested are over federal criteria, almost half, and only 61 tests, with the majority of those happening outside the city. 18 more tests are going to be released shortly. We'll have 80 tests at that time, but 100 residents' homes have not been tested in the city, and they need to be tested. We need to have some kind of outreach, whether it's this board or the city. So I'm looking forward to hearing the strategy. If the LDFA has contaminated Marathon, Mary, and North Park, it is in your purview. Maybe a preview is necessary. But please hire the right people to study this, to plan it, and resolve this safely for our community. And thank you again for the votes you've been making. You're moving in the right direction. Just would like to see it go faster, whether that means more meetings with the city, and or getting people on board that can help solve this, because I don't think you have that at this point, and you're moving in that direction, but you're not there yet. So thank you so much. Thanks for not cutting me off, too.
You're under your 3. You've got an extra minute.
Oh, don't say that.
I'll take his extra minute for him.
It doesn't work that way.
Hello, my name is Art Stevens. I just wanted to, first of all, come up and I love the agenda. Thank you so much. I see the bylaws being addressed. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I also wanted to mention, I know just for any clarifications, I know that sometimes it can be looked at, it's been mentioned by maybe some of us, maybe if I got myself grandstanding or showcasing, it has really nothing to do with that. It's about seeing like the steps you're making. Your board, I believe, is the solution based. I know you sit here and it sounds like people in the public might be attacking you. This board, I don't believe, my opinion is it's not this board, you're the solution. You've just, a lot of you are new and some of you had no idea of how things were being presented in the past. I actually brought some stuff, it looks like you might have got it today, about the budgets and the 3 funds that are within the LDFA. I strongly encourage, as the budget is being prepared for the city by the April and May, that in the past, this board used to, and the bylaws require your board to be part of that process. On a quick note, I do think you should look at that utility fund. I was even reading in the budget where the rates are established by the LDFA for that fund, and they talk about the agreement in there. So I would think that the question that Mr. Warner asked might also be an LDFA decision. So I have, unfortunately, I was literally shoveling. I thought this was at noon, so I didn't come as prepared. Hopefully by the end I'll have enough, but I did bring copies. I'm not sure if you got this, but copies of the budget that came from the city's budget that I think that all of you should have, the 3 funds that are under the LDFA. And I literally was making copies when it happened and when I came here. I did want to also end by saying there are some wells in that LDFA district that I believe are under that are private wells that were supposed to be capped and closed in 2018 in November that haven't. I don't, it's not my decision of knowing why the city hasn't wanted to do that, but I do feel that this board, even having the knowledge, I personally would be willing to get funds from the community to help those people connect to in the LDFA district to the city system and cap those. And it seems like that's a quick solution for at least those properties that the LDFA could do. And even knowing how the capping process went in the fees, we could orchestrate that so that at least those families could be hooked in, and that might be a quick solution for the problem. Thank you so much.
You took Bill's minute.
Oh.
I'm teasing.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like one. If you have one.
Art, is there a copy for the public record that I could have?
Yeah, I was hoping to more, but I literally was copying it as I went.
What did you, I mean, I could pull it out. What did you
Yeah, it was
provide?
right for your budget. I apologize, I didn't have enough.
You
I
do
can-
that.
I can
We
have-
can make you a copy.
I can have Stacy do that right now.
Okay. Okay, that's fine.
Want me to have Stacy make copies of that?
No, not really. We can make some. Okay.
From the public.
Okay.
Shut up, Julie.
Seeing no further
You don't need to. No, we don't need that.
folks coming up for public comment at this point in time, looking at moving forward into the next section of the agenda, item 5, bylaws. This is something that I don't know if this board has ever addressed, other than when the LDFA 30 to 40 years ago was originally created. So it's about time that it does get addressed. Where are you going?
I'll be right back.
Okay, did you pass out
Yep,
the?
yep, that'd be
Okay.
good.
All right. Under the bylaws section, and by the way, there are certain things that we're going to look at doing at this meeting this morning that don't require any further action by any other board, such as the city council. There are certain things that if we wish to actually amend the bylaws, we'll take an extra step. That would be getting affirmation of that recommendation by city council. But the sort of lowest hanging fruit right now is item 1, under Article 1, Section 2, elect a new chair and vice chair for the remainder of the current fiscal year. We have passed out scrap papers. If everyone would just simply write on each paper a name and then a position, chair, and then on another piece of paper, a name with the position vice chair. Jeff will collect them, tally them,
Nominate someone for chair.
You want to do nomination?
or you could do nominations. So
I-
this
I would like
process
to
was what we've
nominate
done in
Matt
the
for
past.
chair.
So, okay.
Be grown up about this.
Do you need a second?
We do,
I
yes.
will second that.
Okay.
So then am I
So,
just-
I apologize. We, open office here. Nomination for who?
Matt.
Matt,
For
okay.
chair.
And second by Mr. Warner. Roll call.
Brian,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
William,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Is this a vote or just?
Emily.
No, it's a roll call.
I was
Matthew.
I believe Mr. Brian Warner is the most qualified. I'd like to, my vote for him.
You're outvoted.
Yeah, you're outvoted, yeah. But so we'll note you as a no. Congratulations.
I do appreciate that.
Okay.
I'm okay with whatever the team.
If the board is comfortable with that same process, and I only did this because this is what we do at city council when it comes to mayor pro tem and other
Oh,
things.
okay.
But,
I wondered what the slips were for.
yeah. If somebody
I would
wants,
like to make the next nomination.
Okay.
Vice chair as Brian.
I'll second that.
Mike,
Yes.
William,
Yes.
Jennifer, Julie,
Yes.
Caitlin, Emily, Matthew,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Marcus.
Yes.
Technical question, when is fiscal year '26 chair and vice chair selected?
So,
First according to bylaw.
yeah, it would be the beginning of the new
Beginning of the
fiscal
new
year.
fiscal year, okay.
Yeah, we run a July 1 to June 30 year.
Understand.
Yep. So this next item, Article 1, Section 7, establish a date to complete an annual audit of the LDFA's fiscal year business to be submitted to City Council. It seems like it's really simple to do, but I don't think that it is. And the reason why I don't think that it is because the annual audit of the LDFA's funds is a part of the annual audit of the city's funds. And that annual audit of the city's funds typically happens by the end of the calendar year every year. This year, it happened to come out, I think, a week after. I mean, it was still, we got it finalized a week after. The audit document itself came out by December 30. Maybe we just say by December 31st every year. I don't entirely know what we're necessarily holding ourselves to, because it's kind of out of our hands.
The bylaws allow us to do a language that we would say no later than the city's audit.
That would be
You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
I
that would be
totally
helpful.
Agree with you that you are outside the control of naming a date, depending on your audit term and that schedule. I think we need to be reasonable and no later than, so we're responsible in the audit process, but I don't know that we can name a date.
I like that language, which would say no later than the city's audit.
If the audit is a part of the city's audit, I think
Yeah.
that would make sense, if there's not a holding on to that information beyond when it's released.
Right,
Sounds like Jen just made an emotion and I'd support it.
great,
Brian,
Yes.
Marcus,
yes.
Mike,
Yes.
William,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Caitlin, Emily, Matthew.
Yes, and just a comment, I'd like to be part of that audit for the LDFA business. As part of the subcommittee.
I mean, all of those funds get audited by the third party, but we can bring
Not
you in.
necessarily talking the financial side of it, I'm just saying the business of the LDFA, what's transpired in the previous fiscal year, what's been done well, what needs to be done better.
Okay.
I'd like to be part of that.
So, just so the board realizes, that item is something that would require an amendment, which we just did, to the bylaws themselves, that this board doesn't have the authority to finalize. It does have to get finalized by city council. So,
I think that was for a recommendation to send to the city
Yeah.
council for final approval.
yep. Article 3, Section 2, under number 3, propose a change to city council that verbiage stating first Monday of each month should be changed to holding a meeting at least once per month, allowing for reasonable scheduling flexibility. I think that would be something helpful for this body. Similar to the city council itself, the city charter simply states how they'll meet once a month, does not specifically state date and or time. This way we can meet when we can get our quorum together and obviously publish it and post it accordingly.
I do think that it needs to be made at, like, today's meeting for next month.
Sure.
So everybody has a month's notice of when that next meeting is going to be.
And, well, I'll even take it a step further. So at the last meeting of the calendar year at the city council, we actually adopt an annual meeting schedule. And that meeting schedule does flex around federal holidays, and it does flex around times of the year when people tend to travel. So I'll just give for instance, the city council generally meets the first and third Mondays of every month. They don't have a meeting in the first of the month in January or in July. They don't have a meeting if it falls before the day of an election. And on other federal holidays that happen to fall on a Monday where offices are closed, that meeting then gets pushed to Tuesday. So as for instance, the city council's next meeting isn't on Monday, it's on a Tuesday because of that. And so I would be happy to work, with staff, work with the board to try to establish what we think could be a good working annual schedule and then bring that forward for the board to approve. But I think, just taking it step by step, the first step would just be to adjust the bylaw language to allow that flexibility. And I agree, getting out the date and the time would be helpful, so. So is that a motion? Ms. Theobald?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. Still working on it?
Can I just make a comment about Article 2, Section 2? I mean, we're trying to change the verbiage so that we can have quorum, because we have problems in the past of having quorum. So there's a couple other things in addition to this flexibility that we can do. We can fill all the positions of the board in a timely manner. I think for those, the second thing we could do is for those people that don't have the time in their schedule that are on the board, we could encourage them maybe to allow somebody else to serve on the board. So there's some other ways that we can get a better attendance and meet quorum. Just a comment, no action.
I like that. I like that.
All right, thank
Because
you.
I know our bylaws specifically state who should be on the board, but if there's representation from that area, I think that would be just as good.
Right, so we're on our way.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
I guess I have a question on that. When you say representation, are you meaning named person for that fiscal year or for per meeting?
No, I just think, I think overall, if, and I'm not speaking of you.
No, I
in
am speaking
particular.
of me, because I have, by state statute, have to be here, as
No,
does
I know.
Emily, but I can't commit to a year in advance in meetings, like I just can't. But would I then delegate a school representative to be here in my place?
Yes.
And I see that as a pro, I also see that as a con, if every meeting, there's a different person. So I would like to know
I don't,
specifically what the
I
board would
didn't mean to open
prefer.
that can.
That's okay.
I was just asking
okay.
for those that have already communicated to the board that they don't have a lot of time, but they'll still be part of the board. And that is not you, Ms. Brown.
I can
Somebody
offer,
else.
we're not gonna solve this question today. I'll need legal to look at that. My assumption, just an assumption, is that, you know, people get officially appointed. Does it have to be the superintendent, or could it be somebody else? Whoever that somebody else is would have to be officially appointed, and then they serve that term. So it can't be like a substitute filling in. Similarly, the chamber by state statute has a spot on this board. Does it have to be the president of the chamber, or could it be somebody else representing the chamber? That's just something we'll need to square away. I think it's good feedback and good discussion. Another, while we're talking about it, just to throw it out very briefly here, you know, is whether or not the number of bodies on the board, should it be 10, an even number, which to me is a bit odd. You know, why isn't it 9? Which arguably we have that today. Yeah.
Isn't it 11?
Why isn't it 11? Right, I mean, so, it could be 7. Either way, you know, there's that piece too that we need some clarification on, so.
Fair enough.
So when do we is that taken offline then and discussed at a different date, or how do you
Well,
proceed with that?
well, right now, we're just looking at adjusting the
times.
language regarding,
Fair enough.
you know,
Monday.
how often we want to meet. And then I think in terms of establishing an annual meeting schedule, I fully understand you might not be able to make it, any one of us, including myself, might not be able to make the full schedule. But I think getting, you know, if we can generally say at some point in the future, hey, we know that 11 o'clock on the second Wednesdays of the month tend to work, maybe we just go with it. And if we can all be here, great. If we can't, if we have a quorum, then, you know, we'll cross those bridges when we get there.
I would support a motion to establish at least a regularly scheduled monthly meeting.
If I may pause you on that, I apologize, but right now we're just looking at the language to amend the bylaw. Because the bylaws right now say it's every
Monday.
first Monday at noon, which doesn't work for me, doesn't work for, I know
I
at
will make
least
that
one other
motion
person. Oh, okay, so would you just withdraw your
Yeah.
motion? Okay, thank you.
I will make that motion. To have at least one meeting per month, allowing reasonable schedule flexibility.
Okay,
Support?
Marcus?
yes.
Mike?
Yes.
William?
Yes,
Jennifer?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Caitlin? Emily? Matthew?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Just to follow up with
yeah.
that too, we can always pull together a special meeting should an emergency arise.
Yep.
So
And I will, or we will, staff will work on trying to sort of survey you guys to see, you know, hey, does Wednesdays at 11, I'm just picking on this day and time, is this a general time that is doable? You know, so that we can have, you know, the ability, assuming that council approves this language, moving forward with just having a meeting schedule or a meeting template brought forward, so.
just, I want to support something Matt said. Is it feasible to even have a quasi-attendance clause for board members? I have served on boards where there is some guideline of attendance over a year's time. And maybe it's just influencing the right people to be here and make that happen. Maybe that's too deep of a thought, but I have served on boards where attendance requirements are built into the bylaws.
Okay, we can have legal look at that too.
Okay.
So.
Thank you, Bill.
Article 3, Section 2. The director shall render to the board and to the city council a regular report covering the activities and financial condition of the authority. Establish a frequency and start the following process. Number 2, the director shall annually prepare and submit a budget for the operation of the authority for the ensuing fiscal year. Establish a date of completion for the fiscal year July 1st. I just wanted to use this as a sort of a refresher or a reminder that that's more or less a reporting out. I will say formally started that process earlier this meeting with our finance director, providing an update. Our director, who is our director of utilities, Jeff Dietland, does work with finance and me on an annual basis when we do establish the annual budget. Hearing from our new chair just maybe 2 minutes ago, he'd like to be a part of those conversations when it's relative to this body. Completely understandable, and we'll loop them in. And so those conversations will start probably within the next couple of months, Matt, just sort of as an FYI, as we look at piecing together the FY '26 annual budget. So we tend to do that March, February, March, and then April, May is when it actually moves forward to the council level. So that'll be happening in the next several weeks. Number 5, Article 3, Section 3.
No. Hold up on that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the director shall render to the board and to the city council a regular report. So everything that you've said wasn't a regular report rendered. It's rendered to us, but it's not rendered to city council. So I'm looking for frequency, and I'm looking for what that information is going to be. I'm okay with every 2 months. I believe we're not doing it in the past. Article 3, Section 2 says the director shall supervise and be responsible for the preparation of plans and the performance of the function of the authority. So the performance of the function of the authority needs to be audited by the director, and it needs to, in a timely fashion or a regular report, be communicated to the city council. And I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't believe that has perhaps ever happened, to
No,
be
we-
totally honest with you.
We used to do a yearly operation and financial, and it was always annually, and it was Bill was there, I'd say in October every year, so.
Are you talking about the presentation of the budget?
No, I'm talking in the LDFA meeting. And we do and I'd go through each one of the wells, what, how much was being taken out, how much, so the operations part of that, the board got annually in, I want to say October,
Right,
but not the budget.
No. And I apologize. I don't mean to confuse or belabor anything, but I think what Matt's saying is that we have not done that at the council level, that same annual report where we would brief the LDFA on all of the tonnage removed
Right, no.
yeah, so I think.
We gave that to the LDFA, but
Right,
we've never
right.
reported that to
Right.
the
And-
city council.
And that was what my comment was relative to.
I think it would be fair, everybody has busy jobs, but at least on a quarterly basis, the responsibilities of the LDFA, the frequency of every 3 months, that could be communicated to city council, because that's all important information. And I think we'd be in a better place today if that would have been communicated in the past.
And we certainly can do that now, and we can also, and it's a board, we historically never put the minutes on of the LDFA on the city council, and we have been doing that now. So, and that's, again, every time we have a meeting, they have they get a copy of our minutes that have been approved, so they do get that update now. Historically, we never did that, so.
Sure, I guess I'm just asking the board, can we identify a regular report, the frequency of that? And I'm not looking for a presentation to city council, but just a report that updates the status?
May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I think nothing is being discussed here that is taboo or difficult to do. We have the data. It's just a matter of framing it into a report type template, which we have done on an annual basis, just to this body. I think what perhaps would be easiest to do is to look at, frankly, just breaking that data up, reporting it on a quarterly basis to this body, and then when we provide passively to the city council in a public way, in our public packets, the minutes and the correspondence of this body, that would also include a copy of that report, and then they'll have it. And it also is on our website and everything else. So,
Yeah.
Seems
Easy.
pretty basic. We could make
Yeah.
that happen, right?
yeah.
Just,
Thank
if
you
you
for
want it
listening.
quarterly, that's all I need is
No, I'm opening it up. I think monthly is a little bit redundant, but.
Yeah.
Like it, Kerr?
can we get a motion?
Just trying to meet the bylaws. I'm not trying
Sure.
to, I mean,
I don't
'cause
think-
as of the way it reads, we're currently not meeting the bylaw.
Doesn't say anything.
Well, it says establish a frequency. They
Okay.
need to establish the
Would that be a
frequency.
motion, Mr. Schichtel?
Yes, please.
Second?
Marcus,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
William,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Caitlin, Emily, Matthew,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
And I think this number 2 there should be kind of loop back how we did the first one, that I'll establish, the completion of the next fiscal year in accordance with
Right.
the cities. So they'll need to adopt that for that.
Well, why don't you say that in the microphone?
Okay, yeah. The second part of that is the director shall prepare and submit a budget operation. I think we need to circle back to how we did the audit. And again, since I'm doing that with the city budget, I'm doing the LDFA budget. You could say, you know, the same language, that it will be prepared and submitted when the city budget is submitted, or however you guys did that.
Well, as a part of the overall city
Yeah.
budget process. Yeah.
So,
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Thanks, Brian.
William,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Caitlin, Emily, Matthew,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
5 and 6 are very similar. Jeff and I had just brief conversation, about whether we're identifying specific staff members, unless there's a board member that would be interested. We assumed that it would be staff members, or whether or not we're just identifying like the department. So as a, for instance, 5, which is identify a secretary who may or may not be on the board, our thought was perhaps it would be a motion to simply state that a secretary, which would be a member of staff from the utilities department, would serve in that capacity. Today we have Caitlin. Tomorrow we might have Stacy be here, but I don't know if that.
I would make that motion. as
Okay, thank you.
Support?
Marcus,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
William,
Yes.
Jennifer, Julie,
well. Yes.
Caitlin, Emily, Matthew,
Yes.
Brian.
yes.
Similarly, for our treasurer, while we have our finance director, Owen Roberts, who was here earlier today, there is a senior accountant that also works within that department. It's likely going to always be Owen, but just to keep it flexible, would recommend identifying, the finance department as that appropriate department to fill the position.
I would also like to see one of our board members work in conjunction with Owen, and I would like to see that be Bill.
And that's fine, but I thought Matt already volunteered.
No, I volunteered to be part of the audit
Okay.
from a fiscal year, as far as the did wells, do betters. But we're talking about assisting the treasurer, so I think that's a separate.
Yeah. Do you have a little more detail? What type of tasks? What are you thinking of?
Just to maybe month by month, he could go through the individual budget, basically line items kind of thing. Just for our interest as the LDFA compared to Owen, which is city employee. So I would just like to see Bill represent our interest in that.
And he is the most knowledgeable.
And being on the board before,
Maybe just appoint Bill then as treasurer. And then.
in conjunction with Owen, I don't want.
Well,
to
I
have
mean,
to
Bill
worry
would be,
about-
Bill would be treasurer, and then clearly have to liaise with staff.
Exactly my point. I don't want Bill to have to feel like he has to do a budget for the city council, so, in conjunction with Owen.
Well, or whoever, yeah.
That's my motion.
I'll support that.
All right.
So is the motion that Bill is the treasurer? That's what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I
And
guess
he
so.
would work with Owen?
In conjunction with city
The
employees.
city staff, yeah.
What are your thoughts, Bill?
Discussion.
Well, I'm not pro firing squad. Well, since we do not presently do any type of financial monthly update, I guess I struggle with, I have no opposition to Julie's request, but we don't do a monthly report out, and there's really no function of the treasurer on the agenda.
We can change that very quickly.
I'm not looking for you to change it, I'm just making comment.
Yeah.
If we're doing a quarterly update, would it be
I
a
think,
little
I
less
think what Matt said, something that's reasonable.
quarterly?
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
it's a
something,
good place
yeah,
to
monthly
start.
is, yeah, monthly isn't gonna,
For just food for thought.
you just want the piece of
Sure.
action.
But food for thought for members of the board. We do provide for our Downtown Development Authority, which is another authority, just like this is the Local Development Finance Authority, a monthly financial report that takes maybe 30 seconds at best. I simply read a couple of statements. Oftentimes, there's no activity. You know, there's no revenues or no expenses, or maybe there's an expense, but there's no revenues. It's a very, very brief thing. We can do it quarterly. I think that would make it easier just in terms of overall bureaucracy. But we'll happy to help if we're going to have a board member in that position. Obviously, provide all the support to make sure you have the documents. So
Does this even allow for that? I mean, why wouldn't you just call it the treasurer? You know, there's no job description for treasurer that says you have to get in and do this and that. But if you're a treasurer on the LDFA board, couldn't we lean on you to say, hey, Bill, can you bring this to the next meeting?
I
Or
think that's good thought.
I would rather lead towards Bill, because then we don't have to have Owen here for every meeting, because as the active treasurer, he would most likely be obligated to be here for every meeting. So having somebody currently on the board would alleviate that problem.
that's fine. Yep.
Okay.
All right. So motion to appoint Bill as treasurer. Was there support?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, William,
Thanks, Bill.
Yes,
Jennifer,
maybe.
Julie,
Sorry. Julie?
Yes.
Caitlin, Emily, Matthew,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Mike,
yes.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I am virtually tossing you the hammer,
You're tossing me the hammer?
The gavel.
the gavel.
So the chair runs through the agenda?
Well, we had that at the beginning of the order. It causes a little awkwardness,
Would
but
interpret
I
that.
mean, we're all here.
No worries.
So,
All right, next on the agenda is discussion regarding MPART and LDFA PFAS results. I think that's Mr. Dietland.
Yes, it is. I was asked by some members of the board to, present some data on the MPART and the LDFA PFAS results. And so they wanted me to make a new chart. I think this chart we're going to put up on this, well, I know we're going to put it up on the city website so everybody can get it. I didn't want to print out 20 of them. The blue chart, I've taken out all the data points that there's no PFAS in. So we've tested 30, 40 chemicals, and I've just taken the ones that either have a federal standard, a state standard, or have a result. And I compressed it all down. If you don't see it here, and we tested for it, there was nothing in the water. So the blue is above the new federal drinking water standards. The yellow, you can see over here on number 12 here, this is above the current state standard, and of course that would mean it's above the current federal standard too. So as Mr. Barnett had pointed out, we do have a lot of, we got blues here, we got a yellow there, blues, yellows, blues, and almost every one of these are showing some kind of PFAS in them. This guy here, he shows PFAS, but none of his is above either the federal or state standards. But there is this guy here that didn't have anything in it, that he was below all standards. So and had clean water. So there are some currently, and the state and the city has said, these people above state standards. We're not, though the feds have enacted the new federal standards, they have not been the state hasn't adopted them. But I do believe this summer they will adopt them, and these homes that have the blue will all of a sudden go from not being above any standards to being above the new standards of the state. So just want to show that, you know, to the board. There's a lot. I took out people's name. I tried to make it so we couldn't identify the parcels to make sure that nobody gets misidentified on that one. On the second sheet here, this is the LDFA results. I go from the oldest to the newest. I am still using the federal water standard. That would not be the standard that would be applied to this. Early on, you can see I-5 influent, I-5 effluent. We had some above the state standards. And now if you go to the last I-5 we did when we changed out the carbon, there's absolutely nothing above state or federal standards in that. This was the effluent of the plant of LDFA. None of these are above either state or federal standards. All right. This was before we changed the carbon and ran the I-5 through the carbon. So I'm assuming we have not tested. I'm waiting till we do some construction out there, but I'm assuming this number would actually be lower again, even more low, the plant effluent. But there is, again, on this one, this is just our testing of our monitoring wells, our sampling wells, our shallow wells here, S2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and it just shows what we're currently pulling out of the ground for PFAS. And there are some that are above state standards. There are some that are above federal standards. But they are all going through the treatment process. And when they do, I want to, you know, hit that what's going out to the river before we changed the carbon was actually below the new federal water drinking standards. And it should be even lower now. So just on the PFAS on that. I guess that's any questions I can go on. This will be on the city website. I just didn't want to print out 1,000 pages for you guys. And that's one of the reasons why I took out all the non-detects of the other ones. One interesting one here I want to bring up on our treatment. Mr. Warner wanted us to do PFEX or peaches. We did the peaches on the last, these samples right here, and they were non-detect, 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 or below 2, below 2, below 2. We did all these are the peaches. So there's none that we can find out there that there is a correlation between the peaches and some plating companies, not all plating companies. There were plating companies that did not use PFEX. So that plating company we have out there could have been one that did not use it. But the testing we have done out there so far has showed that there is no PFEX out there. We are using the state lab from now on to run those tests, so they will always have that PFEX in there or peaches in there, and we'll be able to determine if there's any coming through the system. So,
Couple of comments, Jeff.
Yep.
If you do look at that spreadsheet, I did note that there are 2 or 3 properties that aren't above the state or federal criteria, but like for PFOA and PFOS, they're like right at it.
oh yeah.
So they're kind of like to me, that's worth noting.
Yep.
And regarding the difference between the state and federal standards, I really would like the team, our team, LDFA team, to really measure our success at moving forward. Any success, whether it's an action by the state or our action, we should look at the federal standard. I mean, that's where the state is likely to be moving to. And then as a landowner, if a property owner, if I had PFAS tests in PFAS in my water, EPA is a health-based standard. I think one way to look at it is that they're deferring the enforcement of that for a couple years until municipalities can get plans together and start to deal with this new chemical. But as a landowner, if I'm looking at a health-based standard, I mean, and I think this is just what everyone would look at, you would look at the lowest standard, the lowest, most applicable standard, and say whether or not EPA is enforcing it, it's an issue. If I'm above criteria and it's a health issue, even though they may not be enforcing it present day, it's a concern. I think we need to measure ourselves against that, and I really appreciate you taking the time to emphasize that and update our data. So
board-
we all have a good common measuring point.
The board requested it, and I thought it was a good idea, so I obviously went back through and got the data, and I updated it to reflect that. I do believe this summer, the state of Michigan will enact PFAS levels that will reflect the state's levels.
You mean the federal?
The state will adopt the federal limits. And actually, so those federal ones will become state limits, I do believe, this summer. So we might as well get used to it on those. These are, again, all private wells. The city of Cadillac's municipal wells are PFAS-free, has been when they were out on 8th Street, has been when they were in Crosby, and is at 44. So these are municipal wells in the area that we're testing. As Marcus had said, we're going to be presenting a plan to the city council of getting people served with water. There's roughly 223 people, rough estimate 223, that are in the city on wells. Of those people, 150 of them have water in front of their homes that they can connect to city water. And then of those, we're going to have another 25 that will be able to, if our plan goes through, that will be on one of these areas that will get water.
Hey, Jeff,
So-
just a comment. Can you, on the other sheet, and this one as well, you got federal standard. That's federal drinking standard.
That is federal
Can you
drinking
clarify
standard.
that?
There's a drinking water standard, and then there's a treatment standard. If we get our NPDES permit for the LDFA, we have a National Pollutants Discharge Elimination System permit. They are starting to put PFAS discharge levels in there. If we had we don't have one, but if we did have one, it's probably going to be 70 or 80 parts per trillion. It is quite high. So we're measuring ourselves, our discharge on this one, our discharge, we're measuring against drinking water standard. And this one here, the effluent, would currently meet all the effluent, all the federal drinking water standards.
Okay, I'm
Right.
just saying, in the title, you say federal standard. What is a federal standard? Is that a federal drinking water standard?
Yes.
Can you make sure that's in there then?
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
And on the
Sorry.
LDFA discharge one, can we put the groundwater standard level in there as well?
We don't have one, but I can see what it would be, the number, and I can put it in. We do not have a discharge standard for PFAS at the groundwater treatment plant. It's not in our permit.
Is there one out there though, state
I
or
thought there
federal?
was one. It was like 170 parts per trillion.
If you have one, yes. And then if you're going into water that's used as a drinking water source, it's basically half that amount.
So one way to look at it, Mike, is say you were a industry or a transporter and you had a spill, and that groundwater was going into surface water body. That's where the state would say you got to clean it up. You got to clean up your spill to that. And then there's the drinking water standard of what EPA considers safe drinking out of consuming. It's a bit different standard because if you're just discharging into a surface water, you're not directly exposed to it because you're not, unless you're drinking it directly out of the surface water. So there's a different exposure level. I think all these levels, Jeff, as the Fed standards get employed and get enforced, the state is eventually I think the state will eventually give us an NPDES permit number that'll be what we can discharge into the Clam River. I think it's probably going to be lower than 70, but that's for the state to determine. But I think, when is our NPDES permit?
I think we have 3 more years on our current one. So, and then you apply in April, it's due in October, and they get to you about a year and a half later.
So there's no level identified currently?
What?
There's no level identified currently?
There is no level identified currently. But sorry, Brian, you go on. I'll finish later.
Well, no, I think we're going to get one here in the next couple of years, and what it is, that will be deliberated on by Eagle. But yeah, I think we'll have one next cycle.
On the M part, the two tabs here, I've got M part results, and this is treatment results. I just didn't rename it. On the M part results, I'll put the water federal standards. On the treatment one, I'll put the water standards, and then I'll put a good groundwater discharge, what their limits are for each of those components on there, just as another reference for people to reference. That way, that will do both.
If you scroll down a little bit, Jeff, like where you have your like legend to your chart.
Yep.
I agree. I think it would be nice to say above new federal drinking water standard.
Yep.
Above new or state groundwater standards.
Yep.
'Cause I think that was a big learning for me when
Yep.
we started talking about this. When we just say standards, I think everybody leaps to drinking standards because we're like really concerned about what we're putting in our bodies.
Yep.
So I think that's a really good distinction between your two tabs at the bottom.
Yep. And I will do that.
Because the wells aren't drinking water, and these.
Well,
other
the M
spreadsheet
part,
is.
the M part wells were
Right.
drinking water.
Okay.
The treatment ones aren't. But we're kind of trying to compare everything to the same standard, and you're right. We should definitely say the drinking water standards are here, and this is our groundwater discharge standard. But these, still compare them to the same.
Yep.
So everybody, apples to apples to apples.
My other question is on the wells,
Yep.
spreadsheet, I think it's this one.
Yep.
You said you took out the data
Oop.
that was clean. How many were
Ooh.
tested that were clean? Like, I mean, I'm just curious, like, was it like 3? Was it 30? Was it 300? Like, I appreciate not just sharing what's most relevant and concerning, but I also want to know.
Well, these are the test results that you can see, like, there's no results here, all these. This is where I got the data from, and I just put the hits on.
Yeah.
So,
There's no results or it wasn't tested?
the results, these are results. I haven't gotten the numbers in yet, but I was putting the numbers in, and that's why I did the
Maybe just
compressed one.
A summary statement on this many wells were tested with
Yep.
detect, and I appreciate, like,
30 tests, and I'm showing you the top 10, or the 10 that have
Yes.
a limit and/or results.
Mixed result, yeah, I think that would be also helpful.
Because this one, the very top one on this chart here, this HFPO-DA, there's standards for both drinking water and the federal drinking water, but we had absolutely no hits across the board on that. So even though there was no data there, I left that in because there was a standard.
Sure.
And so anything that has a standard, anything that has a hit, anything Brian's, the PFAS, Peaches, that we're kind of interested in to see if it goes with Northern, to the plating company, I will put that all in. And it's a rough draft, so I will get a better one. And if the board wants, I can send it to the board and they can
I just
look at
the
it.
explanation, so if I'm
Uh,
going on the website to look at it without context, I think creating some of that context would be really important for the public, because I think that's a positive.
Okay.
If I may, just a couple things I'd like you to try to clarify. I may have missed it, so I apologize. The results and the data that you're showing, is that only in the LDFA area, Jeff, or is it also outside?
The M part is outside, and obviously the treatment ones are just LDFA.
Okay.
Inside the because that's
And-
our treatment.
And that's fine. I think that, one, great information to share, great for the public to hear. Two, tremendous feedback from the board on how to improve the, what's being presented. I think what we should do is update this information to reflect the feedback. And then under our city website, we have right in the news and noteworthy sort of circular tab right in the beginning, right on the homepage of the city website is a whole thing about PFAS. And it links you right to our PFAS resource page where we have a depository of the heat maps and the test results and everything regarding this topic. I think we should put this information there as well, just so that it's out there for the public to be able to consume without, having to dig for it. Versus putting it somewhere like awkwardly within our own LDFA page, which we have that talks predominantly about LDFA-related materials. So, but we could put it in both. I mean, but at least put it under PFAS.
With that said,
So-
if someone has a hard time with a computer or isn't finding something, can they
We'll
come in
print it
here
out,
and you
sure.
will print that for them?
Yep.
Yeah.
They
As
don't
with
have to
anything.
FOIA, they don't have to pay for the sheet, not,
No. When we have materials that are a part of public meeting packets presented in a public way, we don't have people go through that process.
But to Jen's point, there will be at least a couple paragraph summary that can
Yeah, we'll
avoid
wanna-
a lot of follow-up questions.
Yep.
Yep.
We'll take this draft that we're presenting to you guys publicly and clean it up
Yep.
based on the feedback.
Yeah, two quick comments. Thank you for reporting this with the state and federal guidelines. It's, to my knowledge, the first time it's been presented like that. So thank you for listening to the board. I think it speaks volumes to the board. It speaks volumes to the community. So thank you for putting that out there. As far as second, VOCs, I know there's some private testing wells for VOCs in the future. Maybe we could dive into some of those results. And I really
got
appreciate
those results right here.
Okay.
I was gonna. It's not on the agenda. I didn't present it as an agenda item, but I do have them here. I want to say to the board, I've been hearing rumors there's VOCs out there. All the test results we had ACOM do it when they were doing the PFAS testing. The city authorized them to go out and do 20 wells, whichever 20 they wanted to do the VOCs on those 20 wells. And because we wanted to see if anything got away outside of the LDFA area, and they were doing the wells outside the LDFA area. And I have 13 of them here, I do believe, and basically, non-detect, non-detect, non-detect. I have 2 of them that have a slight detection in chloroform, which I've been told is a laboratory contaminant, that when you're doing the lab test, that right here, this chloroform, I've been told this is a laboratory contaminant. Again, the level I had was 0.0078. The MCL or action level is 0.08, so it's 10 times less than what the action level is. But other than that, there's just nothing, there's nothing on these that show any VOCs. We are getting some more data in. I took off the people's names and I put off what their addresses were, and this will also be on our website someplace. I will just say, hey, here are the VOCs of various wells in the community. I don't want to identify the specific homes. Nobody wants that, but I just want to put it out that we are not getting reports back of any VOCs out in our system, and that is the number one or 2 priority of the LDFA was VOCs and the hexavalent chrome. So what we're testing for outside of the area does not show any VOCs. Maybe we'll get a test that does show that, but we haven't found it yet.
Are you testing for hexavalent chrome in any of those?
Only if we made the decision because of the hold time. If we had a VOC in those, we would test for a hexavalent chrome. But we have not tested for that because the hold time is ridiculously short, like 24 hours. You got to get it to the lab, and so we'd have to pay for a high priority mailing and all. It just ACOM did not want to do it. They would do the VOCs, but they said you're going to have to get somebody else to do the hexavalent chrome.
Everything I've seen in the historic data for hexavalent chrome within the LDFA has been solid, been below criteria. There are some remaining wells based on the last set of data, 2021, where we had some above criteria VOCs. So this is important. I think this is important to communicate to the public. I mean, it addresses the concern of there's data out there, we want to see it, and it's going to get on the webpage. I take it and available to the public.
Yep.
I think it's one more set of data that kind of confirms this is just in my opinion, that the LDFA system's worked. It's worked very well over the last 30 years, and the work that was done by the city leadership 30 years ago was spot on, was fantastic, and the work that was overseen by the prior LDFA members, Jen, Mike, others, that's worked, and there's more testing to come, and I'll I'm subject to change that opinion if we see other data, but so far what I've seen has been very good. There's more testing yet to come when we start our quarterly testing for VOCs, and Matt, you've expressed a concern about that. It's valid. So I think it's okay for us to say as a community, yeah, this is a win. This is good. Yet at the same time, say where we're at on PFAS is not where we want to be. It's not okay, and we have a lot more data to collect and share, and we've got a lot of work to do. But I think we can do both at the same time. We can give credit where credit is due, but then tell ourselves we're not as a community. And I respect the fact that this is outside. Much of the PFAS is outside of the LDFA. But if we work together, I think we can get. I think we have a good team in place to defeat this. And PFAS is our enemy. That's who we should work against. So more to come.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Section 7 is next on the agenda, additional well PFAS testing and I-series wells.
Yeah, we had a earlier meeting talking about the agenda, and it was brought up that some members felt we should go out and maybe test the production wells, the I wells. We have tested all the shallow wells, all the S wells, and the data is on the sheet for PFAS here. All the
I is for intermediate. Just
yeah. So anyways, all the wells were tested, the I wells, and so the question was, does the board want us to go out and do the, we have done the I-5 well. We did do the I-6 well when we were, the last meeting, we were told to do I-6. We have I-1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 13, I think, or 11. 13. Anyways, does the board want those other ones tested? Now, I will tell you, we have an item later on about some treatment we can do on some of the wells. These wells, we will get the data, and there's absolutely nothing we can do out in the field. There's not a pipe we can reroute it to. It is what it is. The number's what the number is going to be. So we're getting numbers at the plant. We're getting numbers and the effluent, what it is. It's a board decision. If you want me to test them, just authorize me to test them, and I will. If you don't, that's up to you. But the board, Brian wanted me to bring this up and see.
Jeff, let me jump in for just a quick second. I think just for some further board context, the LDFA board did have this discussion a month or two ago and limited the authority for us to test to the ones that we tested. We did discuss back and forth when that conversation happened, should we just do it all at once? Should we just do a couple, basically the sampling? The decision at that point was just to do a limited sampling, which is what we did. To Jeff's point, it isn't as if there's actionable activity that could take place pending what the results are on the board. I think at that point, I mentioned a couple of months back, I'll mention again today, that when we look at all of the water that our wells are pumping up as a part of the LDFA operations and what we're putting then back into the environment after it's treated, it is well under the
Federal
the
drinking
threshold.
water standards.
Yes.
I think when we left that conversation, though, we also left it open-ended that
Yeah, we'd come
if
back.
you have a concern, Jeff, you bring it to us and we'll approve what you need.
Right. I was limited to 8 tests, and so if I didn't have a limit, I probably would have tested these already.
So-
But it's, board took an interest in this, so I'm waiting for board
So
direction.
how many more are you looking at needing tested?
I'd say if the board gave me 15 total tests, you know, I know it's less than 15, so.
I'll make that motion to give you the latitude to test those
So-
50.
I'll support that. I think with the data that we're seeing from what we've tested so far, I think that we can't manage, even though there might not be actions that are easy to implement, there still may be actions that are possible when we get a professional consultant in here. And without that data, we can't proceed.
At the very least, it communicates risk, even if we can't treat it. It communicates risk to the public. Well, here's the profile of PFAS in the area. That's an important item. And I think, Jeff, you're underestimating yourself in the you know, I think with just we didn't start out with the shallow wells thinking that we could do much with that data, but we'll hear later from you that there's some concrete action we can take. So it's certainly a maybe, but it would at least communicate risk.
We gotta know what we're working with.
So we left off where we had a motion and we had a support. Are we gonna vote on that?
Yep. Brian,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
William,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Caitlin, Emily, Matthew.
Yes. Okay, next agenda item, section 8, well flow project update, S1, S2, and I-5, which is an action from the last data that we tested, and we made those actions because the information that we found out.
Right, so, as the board knows, last time, they authorized me to go out and test, I think, 5 wells. I tested these 3. I didn't do the effluent because I want to wait until we do certain action. What we did find out is S1, S2, we are able to intercept their flows and actually take them to the carbon treatment. Those are the only 2 additional wells we can take to carbon treatment. So as you can see here under number P here, address 8, that's our influent of I-5, and that goes through carbon currently. With the new carbon, you can see the results that's coming out, which is 0. S1 and S2 under address S and T, or 11 and 12, they do show some PFAS in those. We can take those and reroute that if the EPA will allow us to go through the carbon treatment with the I-5 influent. And so theoretically, the carbon should capture all the PFAS and it should come out as a 0. We're working with or non-detect. We're working with the EPA to get that cleared. We got to provide them flow data. We got to do some containment size and stuff like that, and their engineers need to work on it. But it is a positive step. I do believe, again, taking that PFAS out plus the I-5 PFAS out would definitely help our outfall to even be lower. As you guys can see under address 6U, there, address 13, that was the I-6 well. That is in direct line from S4 to I-5. I thought this one would be a high number, a really high. I thought it'd be closer to the I-5 number, and it was not. I was actually surprised with the numbers being how close it is to where Northern Air was. But that being said, I just want to update that we are in talks with the EPA. They do seem to be on board with us doing this. They like the idea. It's using our current treatment. There's not a whole lot of resources that have to go in there to redirect those pipes. And probably, if I had to guess, I'd probably say May we'd be able to do that. They will have the approval and be able to, maybe a little bit earlier. But I don't want to get the hopes of the boards up too much. But I do believe we'll be able to reroute that and have it go through carbon treatment and then be non-detect for those other wells also. So.
Any update on Kevin yet? I've heard that he is ready to have his well tested.
If the board wants me to talk about it, I can. I talked to Kevin the other day. He is on board with the EPA or the MPART testing his wells. Currently, there is some mechanical issues that I don't know if his wells will be tested, and I can talk offline on that, but he has asked, I have asked MPart, and yeah, we're in talks on that, so.
So to summarize, for S1, S2, those numbers are coming back above EPA criteria, so we've got PFAS in them.
Yep.
They're relatively low flows, but we can combine that with our I-5 flow, and we can start going on, sorry for the sports analogy, Matt, we can go on offense. We can start removing PFAS from at least the Clam River, and that's a good thing.
Well, lowering what we're putting in for sure.
And and so you have an estimated cost for that?
I have not gotten engineering on it, but looking at it on the construction plans, I would say less than 20,000, probably less than 10. I mean, I think my staff can actually do it, dig it up. We have the we know how to do it. I do believe we can do it in-house, and it will be relatively inexpensive.
You do need LDFA board approval to take that action once upon EPA consent.
Yes.
More than 7,500, yes. So.
Do we need, I'd like to make that motion.
Who pays for this? Does this come out of the LDFA funding?
Yeah.
Is-
Good question. I think is it a capital fund or an O&M fund, Jeff?
We could do it out of either, I guess, at that point. You know, I would suggest to the board to wait on the approval till we get the approval from the EPA. Once the EPA says to go ahead, then I can bring it back to the board, and we can at that point do that action if
So you
the
don't need
board.
that approval from us before the EPA will approve?
No, the EPA will say either it's a viable plan or not a viable plan.
They have the last word.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think when we looked at the volume data, Jeff, I think it was slightly less than 10% of the overall volume from the
Correct.
extraction wells. So it's a huge step in the right direction. And we're going from PFAS to the carbon filters that pretty much no PFAS. So 10% of the volume is a great step in the right direction.
It's what we can do with what we have currently.
And a follow-up question, carbon filters, those need to be replaced, exchanged, recycled. Do we have a good home for those where we can within the rules viably recycle them, and is the cost for that relatively stable?
That's a great question. After our last meeting, I reached out to our carbon person, I guess I'd call it. We had exchanged carbon back in 2003 or so. They have a pile of our carbon. They're supposed to regenerate it, and we're supposed to reuse it. But we hadn't exchanged the carbon. So since we changed canisters, I said, let's exchange the carbon. They haven't gotten. I made the initial contact. They put me in charge of in contact with the person that's supposed to do that, and we haven't gotten contact back and forth. But
Since 2003, lots changed.
prices have gone up since then. So
And they're well aware that there's PFAS in that.
they are very well
That's gonna
aware of it.
complicate their world a bit, but
So they're going to contact us, or actually, since they haven't, I'll probably reach out to them again and say, where are we at on this? And we'll see. They've moved headquarters like 3 times in Pennsylvania, so tracking them down was quite an adventure, but I did find them. They did say they have our carbon, and we just got to go and, get the logistics of it. So,
thank you, Jeff.
yep. Never mind. You'll talk about it later, I think. So.
All right, section 9, Cadillac monitoring plans, acronyms quality management plans and institutional control implementation and quality plan. Jeff, I think that's
Yeah, that's probably me again. We, as this board knows, we went and we have a QAP. We had submitted a QAP to the EPA to a quality, and the EPA has recently approved it, but then they came back and said, you really should have a quality management plan, you should have a monitoring plan, and these other, the ICE institution control plans in place. For some history here, I guess maybe the history would be best. We had all these plans in place. We were cooking along, and we had an environmental place, Lake Environmental, who was doing our sampling, sending our samples into our our labs, providing us with the data. It was a small outfit that won the bid. There was one person in that outfit, and unfortunately, in 2021, that person perished. He died, and nobody took over his business. Nobody contacted us, and so we missed several quarterly samplings at that point. When we did find out about it, we contacted EPA. There was our EPA representative had retired, and nobody was placed on with our system. When we did get Catherine, our new EPA person, that's the first thing I told her. I said, we're kind of missampling. What do you need us to do? And so she said, let's get the QAP going. Let's just update everything. Let's start from ground and update everything, and then from here on out we can, resume everything. And so that's what we're doing. And we had the QAP done. We're having one done for the VOCs and the I don't think it's hexavalent chrome, just the VOCs. And then we're having one, as you guys know, you approved one for the PFAS, which will be approved pretty soon. But after that was done, she said, now we need to do these other ones, or we would like them done, updated. So that's what I'm presenting to the board, to have these done. We can go out, we can bid it. It's above the $7,500. We can bid it, have another firm do it. I would recommend against it. EPA's been very nice to us. We've been talking and getting we've been working together very good, and I would recommend that we just have this done as quick as possible so we stay on the EPA's good side, and we can keep cooperating with them and getting back on track. So this is 3 plans that they will do for us, and they will take the old ones and update them. It is quite a bit of money, but I would recommend doing it.
What's the cost?
$32,500 according to this sheet. And there's 4 forms that we need to be in compliance to.
Is it an annual requirement?
Nope, this would be, once this is done, we're good. We'd have everything else done on that. We will have to start doing annual reports once we get the data in, but we haven't had the data since our environmental consultant died. We haven't had that data, so we did not have to compile it, obviously, but that will be something that will come back to the board when we get that data, a yearly report that goes on to the EPA.
So I have some comments, and I'm going to try to be really kind and humble about my comments, but being compliant to the EPA, we need these services to be approved by the board so that we can be in compliance to the EPA. But my greater concern is that we haven't been in compliance for the last 3 years plus, and I'm rounding down. So, being in compliant to the EPA is how we protect the people. So we need to get on board. We need to make this happen. I would say, overall, I'm a little concerned about some of the trends. I've only been in this for 3 months. I'm a little concerned about some of the trends. Not being compliant to the EPA, not following the bylaws in lots of ways, potentially not being compliant to the EPA in 2018 with our city ordinance. There's lots of things that's not for sure, but there's a lot of things going around, and I think our goal as a board is to not have the public comments that are skepticism and distrust for the city. And I really appreciate what's happened today, because we're sharing the data that's real and we're communicating. but we just need to have a little more attention to detail, and I'm not going after anyone. I just think a little more attention to detail because these are important issues. And I would support this. I would assume that this cost probably wouldn't have been so much if we already had some of this implemented in the past. But unfortunately, EPA is being, Catherine Need is being very kind to us to let us catch up quickly. Those are my comments.
So you need a motion to do that testing?
Oh, for sure.
I would make that motion.
Second.
Marcus,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
William,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Caitlin, Emily, Matthew,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes. Jeff, one of the options EPA could have taken instead of giving us grace would have been some type of an enforcement action, correct?
I would assume so, yes.
Yeah.
Again, the treatment ran all the time. Our NPDS we were following, so yes, there could have been an enforcement action, there definitely could have. So it is a grace that they're extending to us.
It's great. We've been living under the grace, and grace is great to live under in a lot of areas of our lives. Our Lord and Savior Christ, Jesus Christ, and our family, but not EPA.
Well, I think it's also important to note that the EPA themselves didn't have a person staffed to actually run the program on their end either. So it's both parties, both getting up to speed. But I do want to make sure that while we have that motion that we just approved that was passed to move forward with the testing, that we also then do a motion to waive bidding and award it to Fleiss and Vandenbrink to actually conduct that testing. Because right now, I think
Write the
we're-
plans.
But Mike asked a salient point, who's gonna fund this?
So it's going to come out of the LDFA funds on hand.
Is that the LDFA have the authority to do that? I mean, as far as funding
Yeah.
for this, we do?
I do believe so, that you guys are in control of your budget.
This would come out of I believe this would be an O&M issue, come out of the O&M. It's a big hit on the budget, but we got a pretty clear path for compliance, and
It's,
So when you, maybe a naive question, O&M budget, so I was under the understanding in my notes earlier that we had $8,600 in that? Is that that was a different fund? And in our, where we're, the fund in which we're capturing the tax is the one with the 1 million, so do we need to transfer funds into the operational fund, or how does that work?
So I'll speak to it somewhat generically. We will probably twice a year look at coming forward with any adds, moves, or changes in terms of interfund transfers that require board approval. Similar to what we do with city council, we'll bring an amendment forward that'll be required to then make everything transfer legitimately, so.
if I understand the budget, we have about a budget of $280,000 for this fiscal year. We've spent $127,000 year to date, so if our fund balance is 5 and we're authorizing 32, there would be a need.
Oh,
Would
sure,
be
by,
for
at
fund-
the end of
fund
at the end of the
balance.
fiscal year, we'll end up having an amendment.
Okay,
Could have multiple amendments, but for sure, yep.
good discussion.
we have
yeah.
to be very timely about this because, I mean, we've missed several quarterly audits, but several is like 12 or more, so that's a little higher than several. And normally the process would be for something of this large amount, we'd have competitive bids and we'd make sure that this number is where we want to be, but considering the situation that we're in and the grace that EPA is giving us, I think it's the right way to proceed. I just wanted to clarify that normally we probably wouldn't do this process.
Yeah, I don't want to do this again, Mike. I don't want to authorize a no bid on 30K expenditure again. But in light of where we're at with EPA,
And if it gives the board any comfort at all as well, our city charter does stipulate that for professional services, you may waive bidding. It's not something that is not thought about in terms of how our processes were formed. So.
let's not do this again.
Okay, so I guess
Thanks.
we are good on this?
We've got a vote in the hopper.
Well, we gotta do the waive.
No, so
We'll do
the
waiver. Okay.
So it'd be a
I'll make
motion to waive.
waive the, RFP process to move this forward in a, timely manner.
Support.
Brian,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
William,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Caitlin, Emily, Matthew.
Yes.
The request then would be a third motion to move forward with the proposal as provided in your packet. With-
That was the first motion.
That was our
That was
first
the
motion.
first.
I think we're good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Was that the first one?
Yeah.
I do, please.
Sounds good.
Okay, section 11, RFP, we just discussed a little of that. RFP update, environmental optimization services currently out to bid.
Yep, well, just wanted to bring it back to the board. That is out to bid currently. It will be back in our hands at the end of January, beginning of December, February. I would respectfully request that we form a committee that wants to go over those proposals when they come in, so we can have the board choose who they want to provide those services. I think it's time, because we're gonna probably get those proposals back in before our next meeting. Well, depends if we go on the first or not, but I suspect it'll be in before the next meeting.
I know I'd like to be part of that process.
I'd like
I know
Brian on that.
Brian is interested.
Yeah, I'll sign up for that. Thank you, Julie.
So I don't know how many people the board wants, 3, 2,
The chair and the vice chair.
right? So I don't know if I need that official, if you, or just,
No.
all right, then that's just the update. It's out and it's coming in and we're moving forward. So,
Section 12 on the agenda is public comments, and before we start, I just wanted to thank you, Jeff, for discussing the difference with the Fed and the state levels. I think that communication speaks volumes. And I think also maybe taking the lumps and discussing the non-compliance with the EPA and putting that out there so that other people don't have to share that. I think that speaks volumes as well, and that's going to go a long ways to reduce the amount of negative public comments that we have, so thank you for that. Anyone have public comments?
Very good job today, Bill Barnett again. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pecha, Mr. Dietland. You guys are working in the right direction, so thank you for that. I'm very pleased to hear that the movement's continuing. It has taken 9 months to get a new consultant, but you're getting one. There has been some testing. We need more testing. We need people to know to test. We need a human health study for the people that are the 3 homes, Kevin, JT, the other gentleman on 13th Street. We need to do that. One of them has had cancer, is in remission, but we just need to do that. I don't know if they've had VOC testings. There's been a mention of a statute. I'd like to see the statute. The one I found had a junior college appointment. Mike and I are still coming to meetings. Hi, Mike. And we've applied to be on the board back in November 8th. So it's 60 days plus no appointment. And we sit coming to meetings, and it's just not a way to handle it. It's not your fault. It's the city councils. They are not together. This board is together. I like what I'm seeing here. But you covered the budget. Thank you. Bylaws. You're electing people. You have CCTV here today. Thank you for bringing them. The public wants to see these meetings. You're doing the right thing. It should be out there where they can see that. So please keep that up. Very pleased to see the city has done that. No PFAS is healthy. That's the real number we're talking about from the federal government, 0. They just started forcing at these numbers, 4. You're right up there. I'm very concerned about the Clam River and what's been going in there. For 27 years, PFAS went in there without any monitoring. It went at high levels, and it's over there. No testings happen there. So it's accumulating. It's not really a river, it's a stream. And it's all over. We need to test up and down Platte. Somebody needs to do that. That is responsible for putting so much PFAS over in that area. It's just basically been transported from one spot to expose a whole different set of people. I don't know how many wells you have. I thought it was 127. It's now 227. I heard it was 400. There's, sounds like 150 can hook up, 20 to 25 will be easy or able to. 50 other properties are not. So if there's 227 wells that haven't been tested, we need to test those. The city does, please and recommend, encourage that we have testing. There may be some liability here at some point. Then if you do the testing, you know you have a defense. If you've done nothing wrong, please do the testing and share those figures. But I'm concerned about people's health, concerned about the Clam River. PFOA is turning up everywhere. That's your thumbprint that I'm seeing that comes from industry. Industry's had issues with this since 2018. Jeff was struggling with those folks, doing a good job. Things are getting better here. The EPA is on board with what's happening. Eagle is working with you. They're putting 30 people on this thing, 30 deep, working on this. That's how serious this is. And thank you for taking it seriously as well and serving our community in your seats, each and every one of you, and our staff, who is doing very much better. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Galvanic. I run the Cadillac Farmers Market. I just want to say thank you to all of you. As you have probably already seen and heard, I am very passionate about this project. I'm very passionate about my community having access to healthy lives. And that is the entire purpose of the farm that I run, the 2 farmers markets that I run, and the vegetable basket system that I run that accepts all social outreach programs for payment. I have worked tirelessly for many years to help with the health crisis that I moved back and saw with my own bare eyes. I could just see it. I could see it in the store. I could see it in the community gatherings. I could see that there was a health crisis here. Susan and I are running the Cadillac Clean Water Advocates online, just trying to get information out to the people that is a little speedier of a process than going through like every government agency to make up all of these pamphlets, which I did give to Susan. Eagle is now sending them to me. I'm working directly with Eagle and the health department to bring an education through the Cadillac Farmers Market and our vegetable basket program, meeting with MPART, joining subcommittees on education and notification. And I'll work with you guys too. If there's ever anything that I can do to help your mission or to help people understand your mission, to get any education out to the community, just really anything that I can do to help you guys. My heart is in this, sledging the biosolids on my farm, my farmers' fields without them being educated, and on landowners without them being educated on what that really does. Something I'm extremely passionate as of late. And let's see what else. The 20 VOCs outside of the LDFA area, you got to choose where those were done?
Nope, ACOM did. I did not pick any of them.
Why wouldn't they choose any inside the LDFA area for that, for those
Because
tests?
we have our monitoring wells that we do. We have our production wells.
I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah.
So
We
that's,
have information there.
okay, awesome. And then, like the 3 years of missed monitoring, we see that illness is on the rise in our community. Susan and I are fielding dozens and dozens of phone calls every week with kidney cancer, young children with testicular cancer, all sorts of things that are happening in our community that tie directly to PFAS contamination. And I definitely see a correlation with some of those missed tests, the illness on the rise, us not catching it over the last 4 years. And I hope that we make some of our own steps for our own team within with Jeff and with the LDFA, to say the EPA drops their ball again and maybe another person passes away, like how are we going to make sure that that doesn't happen again, that those monitoring, those quarterly monitoring situations don't ever get missed again? Is there some sort of protection we can put in place to make sure that doesn't happen again? And And that's about it. But I really am here to help. I'm also an extremely passionate person. I feel as if I'm absorbing a lot of education here today. I feel like your education is extremely valuable to me. I feel as if you are transparent. I feel as if you are not downplaying this situation, and I really appreciate that. And that's really all I ask for. Is like, let's not downplay it. Let's get the education to the community. Let's notify people that could have had contaminants. I'm really worried about the sludge and the farmland. We need to get a better education to those farmers. We need to get a better education to those landowners on what has happened to past farms that have used this practice for a long time around the country, what could happen to them if they continue on these using these practices, and what can happen to their community, because I can promise you they currently don't know. And I had Eagle send me over their notification that they give out to farmers and landowners, and it is a flowery little small thing that doesn't explain the risks by any means. And so that's going to be something that I'm passionate about as well. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mary. Anybody else?
Mike Solomon, I'll just make a couple comments. Mr. Tenza, you brought up the bylaws and the potential use of alternates. I work with boards that, have designated alternates. It appears that, some members are not attending with any consistency, and I would ask the board to look at if anything can be addressed that way of replacements for those individuals, whether they represent their areas of interest or not. Most of the people in the audience, I don't think, know all the water quality terms, and I assume when you were talking a QAP, you were talking Quality Action Plan.
Yes.
I think we need to define terms as we go. To kind of dumb it down for the rest of us. And Ms. Theobald brought up the selection of the next date of the meeting, and I think that's important so everybody here has some notice. I didn't see it until the paper last night. I've had people ask me about monitoring, and it's really not your responsibility, but of Lake Cadillac and the Clam River. I believe there's a report out from DNR Fisheries that addresses contamination in fish flesh. I know it's in some lakes, and I think Lake Cadillac was addressed, but the water itself may be of interest. So, but I think it was a good meeting. We got a lot more information, and the board is working smoothly, and congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon. Anyone else? Okay. Move to committee comments. We'll start over on the far side. Julie.
I would have to agree. I think we need to figure out who we are replacing those missing people with, and then move towards odd number on our board. Just for those 5-5 votes. I mean, should that ever happen, I think we need an odd number. But I think Mike and Bill have been here multiple meetings. We need to figure out what we're doing with that instead of having them here every meeting. And we just need to seal the deal on that. So I really appreciate that we can talk about these things civilly. Sometimes some boards you don't always get civilly, so I really like civilly. And I think we're moving forward very well on bylaws and how we want things to look now. So I really appreciate that from everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie.
So, Mr. Chair, if to follow through on the meeting schedules before we adjourn, will we, go ahead, I'm sorry, Mark.
Yeah, I was going to propose that we look at February 12th, Wednesday, 11 o'clock. And perhaps we'll have a draft, are you out?
I do believe I'm out.
Okay.
The day before would be all right.
The Tuesday?
Yeah. I do believe I'm on vacation. It's taking a vacation around there.
Okay.
But I can change it if you need me
It's
to.
kind of
Nope.
important that we have Jeff here.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's a mandatory.
Yep. How about Tuesday at 11? 11:11?
I'm not available Tuesday at 11.
Okay. Monday?
Yeah.
Monday seem to work for you guys?
Works for me.
Jeff?
Yeah, if it's
Okay.
Monday, I'll be there.
So why don't we,
I'm available, but I'm a hard stop at 1.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't see every meeting having the voluminous of items as we've had the last couple. It'll be more routine updates, more chipping away at like the bylaws, meeting schedule, stuff like that. So, that seems to work with the group. We'll send out the
10th of
notification.
February we're looking at.
Yeah, February 10th at 11 o'clock. Sorry, Brian, I just wanted to jump in there with what I
I'm
thought.
glad you did, sir.
Yeah.
So other comment was, good agenda,
It's the day before.
good
mine.
contribution from city and member Marcus. Effective meeting. Got more work to do yet. I think one of the reasons why we had a good agenda was we had kind of an ad hoc admin meeting before this meeting, and I would throw out, we need to do that again. I don't know if you want to form a formal committee, Mr. Chair, or just, and just invite those board members that want to participate.
Yeah, I mean, it was very effective, but I don't know if everybody's schedule has time for that. I would be willing to be part of a committee.
I as well.
Yeah, I was gonna just suggest, I don't think it necessarily needs to be
It
formal.
doesn't need to be a
Yeah.
committee, but this just,
No, working with other bodies that we have in the city, the chair commonly will contact the department head, which in this case would be, Jeff Dietland, work on agenda issues. I get brought in when I need to be,
Okay.
I think what
So-
really helps is, Jeff, when you put the agenda out there with enough time for critique. I appreciate that. You did that this month, so that'll allow that.
So, we'll just continue to do that.
and then there is an item in the bylaws regarding is it in the bylaws regarding posting of minutes?
Yes.
We have we have a deadline on that?
It's usually 8 days, and that is Open Meetings Act.
From the approved minutes.
From the approved.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah, those will go on our website,
Yep.
now that it's approved tomorrow.
Okay.
Obviously, these won't go on until next meeting, so.
Those are my only comments, thank you.
Bill?
For the purpose of concision, thank you for being here. I know it's a lengthy stay and it's tough to adjust schedules. Never underestimate our sensitivity or empathy towards the situation. This is too complex for me at times. So, but I think we're going to get it done. I'm in it to win. Just be patient, and I realize that's hard to ask anybody impacted to be patient. But we are volunteers and we do care.
I still am a bit concerned that this is bigger than an LDFA zone issue. PFAS is at the ISD, it's up at High Point. And I just wonder, as a member of the, an employer in the area that's going to be assessed taxes, that this might be bigger than just the LDFA area. And we might have to go citywide or, something with the county. And we're going to start spending funds for things outside of that LDFA area. And I just think that the council needs to address the charter of the LDFA. Is it truly just hexavalent chromium and the VOCs, or is it PFAS or forever chemicals, which I think is we've talked about the peaches that was in plating that hasn't been found outside the LDFA. It hasn't been found in some of the wells we've tested. So nobody knows who put this PFAS in these areas in our city, in our area. And I do think we do need some clarification as to what the LDFA board can be responsible for, and does that TIF expand beyond the LDFA area? You know, this is a citywide issue. It's a more of a region-wide issue, so I think it might, we do need to look at that as a LDFA board and ask the council what direction do we need to take.
If I could briefly provide some clarity right now. One, the TIF doesn't just automatically change borders. It's set to the restricted zone as identified within the LDFA settlement documents, to just call it that. Two, and I apologize, I realized as you were making these comments, I don't think I was very clear in my opening remarks when I talked about extension of water infrastructure, like out to Marathon or even out in Herring, potentially up to Mary. None of the costs relative to any of that would be charged off to anything LDFA or LDFA TIF related in any way. That's a city infrastructure project under the utilities fund. It would ultimately be the cost, in a sense, of the utilities department. LDFA is under the utilities umbrella, but it's a whole separate funding mechanism. The ratepayers of our city that pay rates for the use of water and for the use of sewer services, ultimately those rates would have to support the O&M of that, the operations and maintenance of that infrastructure putting in, not the LDFA, not the LDFA TIF. If the LDFA's scope or focus, whether it's regarding PFAS or whether it's regarding any other substance that's not specifically identified within the LDFA paperwork, is to become the charge of the LDFA, that would require legal to change and amend the documents, change how the special assessment works, change the board. I mean, it would be a rather complex process. And the only reason why this body is involved right now with PFAS is because the EPA, as we approach them with regard to, was it hexavalent chrome, and going through a process of stopping the testing on one of the wells for that because we keep getting like zero detects, they said, hey, we're not going to approve that unless you look at PFAS within your LDFA area. So that's how this body got brought into it. And then the rest has been a snowballing effect of, okay, we're going to go above and beyond. This body has chosen to go above and beyond just the one well, looking at a sampling. We have had Eagle basically facilitate all of that, and then that, again, snowballing has created these study areas. The study areas and things that Eagle are doing are they don't care about borders, whether it's LDFA or not LDFA, or city or non-city. It's just, where they draw the
We're
circles.
discussing on the 21st upcoming city council meeting, you're bringing up some of these
Yes.
ideas.
Yep.
And you're trying to hand the baton a little bit over to
Yes,
some of these bigger
yes,
issues.
and that was the purpose, thank you for bringing me back to center. The purpose of my opening remarks is to say, look, I'm going to ask the city council to essentially approve going out for bidding for this infrastructure project that we're already working with engineering on, design and engineering for. We already have Eagle looking at the permitting for it to be that far ahead, so it doesn't get caught up in bureaucracy in terms of just sitting for months. And so that's, I think, the proper board really to move some of those things forward.
Can we also get clarification on our members and who we're putting on, if we're putting somebody on, and get that clarification as well?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that we'll start to move that forward too. So,
But we are not putting people on the city.
correct.
to be
The city council does.
LDFA.
City council does. So, and the clarification on, can you have alternates or designates, I mean, that's going to be a legal thing I'm going to have them look at, so.
I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, I have 3 quick things. Meeting minutes for the LDFA. I'm trying to catch up here, 3 months into it, and you put 5 meeting minutes on the website. I appreciate that. Prior to 2024, you put 5.
Right.
I noticed that the archives for the city council goes back to 2008. There's hundreds of meetings. And if you could add what we have, when you have the opportunity, it would allow me to catch up on some of the past decision-making that has been put into place. Second thing is for closed meetings. We had a closed meeting last month. And hopefully, when we have another closed meeting, we can review the criteria of what's involved to have a closed meeting, because I personally don't like closed meetings, and I know it's part of the process, Ms. Brown, having closed meetings, but it brings skepticism, it brings mistrust sometimes. So if we can look at the criteria, and I know, Julie, you're really good at this area, and I know the lawyers can help us as well. But if we do things right, we don't need closed meetings. And if we follow the guidelines and we meet the EPA standards, we don't need closed meetings, and we don't need lawyers that are involved in our meetings. So it makes things a lot more simple. Last thing is the Cadillac Advocates for Clean Water. Susan and Mary, I appreciate what you're doing to educate the community. And what I appreciate the most has been, there's been a couple instances where people have exaggerated or it was completely false and you shut it down. And I just wanted to thank you for that, because we need good data out there. So that's all I have. With that, we're going to adjourn.
Motion to
Thank you,
adjourn.
everybody.
Second.
No, did you call for a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, okay. So moved.
Good.
Yes.